Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Kristen Delaney, and I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Corporate Communications here at COBMC. And now I would like to introduce Lieutenant Lee Matthews, who will be giving us our safety message for today.
Hey, good morning. Lieutenant Lee Matthews, Cobb County Fire Emergency Services. We're going to start off with a little safety video that's going to explain a lot about what's going on with the Fire Prevention Week with the NFPA. So if we could start that. All right. So just like you see in the video, we need to plan our escape. The theme this year is Fire Won't Wait, Plan Your Escape. Most people don't realize that you have less than a commercial break to get out of your house if it catches on fire. That's how fast burning all the material that is made in your house today is burning that fast. So we also want you to make sure that when you plan your escape, that you're practicing your escape. So you need to do this at least 2 times a year. You need to make sure that you have 2 ways out of every room, and you need to have a meeting place outside that doesn't move. Something like a rock, maybe your mailbox, or maybe it's the front of your driveway. So we need this spot so that you know that everyone in your family or everyone in the home has gotten out. And this is information you need to give firefighters when they arrive on the scene. So please make sure you make an action plan, check your smoke alarms to make sure they're working at least once a month. And if you ever hear the chirp, it's time to make a change. So change your batteries. So this is going to complete my safety message for the day. So thank you very much for having me on.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Lieutenant. That was very helpful to get us started today. I'm Krista Williams. I'm with COBMC, and I'm going to be our MC for the rest of the webinar. And before we have our next speaker, I'm actually going to share some tips with you all as well. The first section of our webinar is going to be about scam and electrical safety. We'll also have a section on cyber safety, and then we'll end with some holiday safety today as well, since we're approaching the holiday season. So starting off with scams. Scams are unfortunately something that's running rampant in today's economy. A lot of people are hurting, and some people are trying to take advantage of others as a means to try to collect money. But in terms of what you can be on the lookout for to know if you could potentially be getting scammed are anything that's really out of the ordinary. Some of these tips are specific to COBMC. We've gotten several reports from members that there are people in the community who are impersonating COBMC employees, threats to cut off electric services. Just know that we will never have an unscheduled visit or call to you. So we don't reach out to our members to do these sorts of things. We don't want to take advantage, obviously. So if it seems a little fishy, it most likely is. And if you ever receive a call from anyone saying they're from COBMC or any company, if they're calling you and demanding immediate payment, That's always something to be on the lookout for, especially if it's through a very strange form of payment. Sometimes people might ask for a gift card or you to give them, scratch off the gift card number and tell them that over the phone. Anything like that is definite red flag. And just, of course, as you would always, be very protective of all of your personal information. If somebody calls you and says they're with a certain organization, you can actually look up that phone numbers or the organization's phone number, call them and say, hey, I just received this phone call. Was this actually you? Did you just call me? And a lot of times that's how you can also sniff out a scam as well, if somebody reaches out and is trying to collect that sort of information. So again, these are just a few things to be on the lookout for that you want to kind of have those alarm bells in your head sounding off for. If you see any of these things, you could be getting scammed. So just be cautious of these. Next up, on the next slide, we have some additional tips related to scams on how to protect yourself. So if you do have any of those red flags or warning signs that someone could be trying to scam you, these are the things that we recommend, especially in relation to COBI-MC. So number one, you can ask to verify that person's identity. So you can ask them, who are you calling with? What's your name? What's your contact information? Again, so that you could call that exact organization and say, hey, this person reached out to me. Do they work for you? Is this a legitimate call? Another thing with relation to COBI-MC and to other utility services you may have as well is always pay through their designated payment portal or payment methods. So, they should not be reaching out to you asking you to pay over the phone. Next, don't provide any additional personal or financial information that you're not required to provide. And again, if someone is trying to solicit that from you and they're reaching out to you versus you reaching out to them, that's something to avoid. Next, don't let anyone into your home that you don't know. Unfortunately, scams are in person now as well. People are going door to door trying to sell things, pretending that there's somebody they're not. So you just want to be aware of that. And then lastly, in relation to this, if you see a scam or see someone who is trying to be fraudulent impersonating COBI-MC, please let us know. You can call into our main contact phone number at any time. That's really helpful to us because then we can send emails and warnings out to other members that scams are going on at that current point in time and to be extra cautious. We actually have a webpage on our website completely dedicated to ways that you can be aware of scams, what to be on the lookout for, and more tips just like this. So we've included a link here below. But again, it's unfortunate that these are going on, but if we're talking about how you need to be safe in your day-to-day life, this is definitely something you need to be on the lookout for. So on the next slide, we're actually going to transition into electrical safety. I've got just a couple tips for you, and then we're going to share a video for you to watch as well. That's a little bit more of an in-depth demonstration related to electrical safety. But these are probably the most frequent tips that we give out to members, things to be on the lookout in terms of how you may come into contact with power lines and what to avoid. So the first tip there, you can see our little character is trying to do some roof work on her house, and there are power lines that connect to her home. So if you are ever trying to do any sort of home improvements and you do have a line that feeds directly to your house, you need to remember to always stay at least 10 feet away. Of course, having metal from a ladder come into contact with an electric line is something to avoid. And you would think a lot of people would know this, but a lot of times you may not think about it. So just be mindful of that if you're doing home improvement projects, or even if you have a contractor doing work in your home. Next, if you see a damaged line, this could be in your neighborhood, out in the community, stay away and call COBI-MC. If you don't know if it's a COBI-MC line or a Georgia Power line, if you contact any sort of utility provider, we can identify, whose responsibility it is and get someone out there to correct the downed line and make sure that everyone stays safe. The next one is a very scary situation, and hopefully it never happens to you, but we do get some severe weather here in Georgia. If you are ever in a vehicle, in your car, and a power line happens to fall onto your car, it can be very, very scary. So in that situation, you actually need to call 911 first, stay inside your car, and they will coordinate with COBMC to make sure we can get that electric line completely discharged before they even try to get you out of that vehicle. So if that does happen, the best thing to do is to stay put. Next, we have a couple tips, again, kind of related to things that you might see in and around your home and your neighborhood. Our transformer boxes, those green boxes that are outside, they are safe if you stay from a distance, but can be harmful if you reach inside. So make sure to, especially kids, I know they can be tempting. It almost looks like a little table. Don't play in or around transformer boxes. And then lastly, if you are doing any sort of gardening projects or trenching around your home, like for example, if you're having an electric fence put in for a dog maybe, always call 811 before you dig. This is a free service that anyone can take advantage of. And what they'll do is they'll come out to your property and they'll insert those small little neon flags marking areas where there could be underground lines that could pose a potential safety hazard. So anytime you're planning to dig or stake anything into your yard, that's always a best practice. So again, that was just a few electrical safety tips to get us started. And now we're going to go into a quick video from Tico, who's going to show you some more electrical safety tips.
Hello everyone, my name is Tico Jones and I'm in the Education and Community Relations Department at COBMC. And this is Watson's Electric Avenue. And right beside me, I have my friend Watson. He's our safety ambassador here at COBMC. This is a safety presentation that teaches the dangers of electricity. And I want everyone to be as safe as possible around the electricity. So before we get started, I want to provide you a couple of definitions about electricity. With electricity being so dangerous, we must respect it. So the first one is gonna be electrocution. Electrocution is the death by electric shock. So we want to make sure that we eliminate that situation or that term in our lives because electrocution is very dangerous. The second is going to be voltage. Voltage is the pressure that pushes electricity down the power lines. Then the third definition is energized. That means that there is power flowing through, whether it be the power lines, your meter, but it is providing electricity to and from your home. So now that we have those definitions, I want to also speak a little bit on my safety attire. Watson also has a safety attire. The first safety attire is our gloves. I have a rubber pair and a leather pair. And what that is that protects me from electricity. So it allows me to prevent from being shocked or electrocuted. My second is my eyewear, my glasses. Electricity tends to arc, and if it arcs, it will allow me to protect my eyes from the arc. My third is my fire-resistant shirt that provides me the protection from any fire or arc. And then last but not least, I have my hot stick, and what this does is it allows me to maneuver around Electric Avenue so that I am safe. Before I get started, Watson, I want to thank you, and I will need your help in a couple of moments, so I'll call you back. Don't go anywhere. Thank you, sir. In this presentation, I'm going to demonstrate electricity and how it flows through our neighborhoods. So we're going to start off right now just realizing that electricity is invisible, so you cannot tell where the electricity is. But just because you cannot see the electricity does not mean it's not there. So how are we going to be able to tell that the electricity is flowing through and that the power lines are energized? If you take a look here at this house, you have a light that every time the light comes and flashes red, that means that the electricity is flowing down through the power lines. So now in this demonstration, what we're gonna talk about is flying a kite. Susie really wanted to learn how to fly a kite, and I know when I was younger, I used to love to fly kites. So Miss Smith is gonna teach Susie how to fly a kite. The one thing that Miss Smith did not pay attention to is how close she was flying her kite to the power lines. And we do know that electricity wants to get to the ground, and it wants to take the path of least resistance to get to the ground. So as Ms. Smith becomes closer to the power lines, the electricity has a chance to arc, and now Ms. Smith has been zapped. And with the electricity passing through Ms. Smith's body, you see that the electricity will pass through her body to the ground, which, like I stated before, the electricity wants to take that path of least resistance to the ground. So here we have Susie. She is walking through her neighborhood and she sees one of the green transformers open. The transformers are designed to step electricity up or down into your homes. So you have the electricity flowing from 7,200 volts of electricity to the transformers, which this is an underground transformer, and the transformer steps the electricity down to 120 volts to your home. So with Susie seeing and noticing that this transformer is open, she's a little curious, and then she becomes too close and comes into contact with the transformer, and she gets zapped. So with her getting zapped, this is a reminder that you don't want to sit on, you don't want to stand on or play around them. I know when I was younger, our transformer used to be right at the bus stop and everybody used to sit on it on cold days. So now that I know what I know about the transformers, I would advise you, please do not sit on them, touch them, or play around them. Alrighty, so we have Bobby here, and he was playing kickball, and like myself back in my younger days, I was the king of kickball. He's kicked the ball into a substation, and with the gate being open, Bobby wants to go in and retrieve his ball. Unfortunately, Bobby comes too close to the transformer, and he is zapped trying to get his ball. So in that scenario, if you ever see a substation, when you're passing by, if there is a gate that is open, please do not enter the gate. It is very dangerous. It will also be marked danger high voltage on the fences that are around them. So please be safe and do not enter any of the substations. Okay, so Susie was in a bus accident leaving school, and the bus actually knocked down a power pole. Power line has now fallen on the bus during the accident. So the scenario is, what do we do? How do we stay safe? Rule number one is, as long as there's no fire damage or anything like that, you remain on the bus until your help or first responders comes to assist. If there is a danger of a fire or smoke or something, then you need to get off the bus. So in this scenario, Bobby sees the accident, so he wants to come help his friend Susie. And unfortunately, remember, electricity once again wants to get to the ground, and Bobby gets zapped due to standing on the ground while Susie's safe because she's on the bus, and the bus actually rolls on rubber tires, so the rubber is keeping her safe. So in a scenario, if you're ever involved in an accident, please stay in your vehicle unless there is a danger. If there is a danger and there is a power line that has fallen on your vehicle, then what you would need to do is to make sure that you get out the vehicle as safe as possible. So what's gonna take place is I'm gonna call my friend Watson back over, and what Susie's gonna do is once she gets to the final step on the bus, she's gonna cross her arms, she's gonna put her feet together, and then she's going to bunny hop off of the bus. And we ask that she bunny hops at least 50 feet away from the bus, so that provides enough distance between the electricity and Susie herself so that she is safe. Once she gets from outside 50 feet, she's safe, and then she can run and seek assistance if she is injured. So Watson, I want to once again thank you for joining us today and helping present Watson's Electric Avenue. And we've taught you a little bit about the safeties and dangers of our neighborhoods. So once again, we want you to be mindful and take care. Thank you once again, Watson. Thank you for watching, and you all have a great day. Be safe.
Thank you, Tico, and thank you, Watson, for sharing those important electrical safety messages with our members joining us today. We're now going to transition to our next topic, which is everyday computer safety, which is something that's always top of mind, especially in today's digital age. And we've got a great presenter for you today. We've invited Corey Bearden, who's COBBMC's Supervisor of Network Security and Infrastructure, to talk to you a little bit about the things that you need to be aware of when you're using the internet and your computer online. Corey?
All right, thank you for the introduction. Now I'll go over some computer safety tips everyone can utilize in their day-to-day computing. Today, I'll be discussing some of the most important things you can do with your computers, and in some cases, your mobile devices as well. I'll break up the information into 4 categories: authentication, backups, public networks, and phishing. Next slide. All right. So let's start off with authentication. So what is authentication? To most of us, it's simply a username and a password. More and more, however, biometrics are becoming popular, and we can use facial recognition or a fingerprint. And many of you will be familiar with multi-factor authentication, which typically combines your username and password with a token code. Modern devices require us to authenticate many different times and different ways in order to access our information. With all this authentication, it can be easy to use weaker methods. Some of the common pitfalls are using shorter, non-complex passwords, writing down passwords and leaving them available, reusing passwords across multiple sites or applications, or using a PIN where a password or biometrics can be used. But we really need to consider what is our trade-off here for convenience. In some cases, the data you're protecting may not be that sensitive. But I think for the most part, if you've taken the time to protect it with a password, then that data holds value to you. So you should use your best efforts to protect that data, because once it's compromised, you can't make it private again. And if it's your identity or bank account, it could be very costly to gain control over it again. So what can be done to avoid these unsafe practices? First off, use a password manager where it makes sense. 99% of your accounts can be put into a password manager like LastPass. This will allow you to use strong passwords that you don't need to remember. When I generate a password like this, I use 20 characters, including upper and lowercase letters, plus numbers and special characters. Most websites will support this, and it's a strong enough password that it won't be guessed. The only password you'll have to remember is the main one to sign into LastPass. And when you create the master password, use a passphrase. These are complex but easy to remember. So let's look at the example at the bottom of this slide. It says super secret password 38 exclamation. So this example is 22 characters long and has at least one of the following: an uppercase letter, a lowercase letter, a number, and a special character. It's easy to remember because we capitalize the first letter of each word, use a number that's easy to remember, and the special character is the first one on the number row. You could make this even easier and only capitalize the first letter, and you really wouldn't be giving up that much in the way of security. Now, there may be some cases where either the operating system or application will allow the use of a PIN instead of a strong password. Avoid this at all costs. PINs are faster and more convenient, but the trade-off is security. If anything, you should be looking to use a stronger authentication method. It will only take a little more time, and your data will be safe. Now we'll talk about using biometrics for authentication. What are we talking about when we say biometrics? Well, biometrics refers to the use of something you are to authenticate. In the past, the most common form of biometric authentication was a fingerprint reader on a laptop. More recently, many devices such as cell phones and now newer laptops allow the use of your face. So let's talk about Windows Hello facial recognition real quick. With the Hello feature, 4 distinct steps are taken to authenticate a user. First, find the face and discover landmarks. This is where the face is discovered and key points such as the eyes, nose, and mouth are mapped. This does require a special camera that has infrared sensors. Next, head orientation occurs. This is where Windows determines if enough of the landmarks were collected and if you were facing towards the camera. After that, the landmark locations are used to create a representation of the face, which is stored as a histogram. Finally, the decision engine can use this representation of the face to compare against future authentication attempts and grant or deny access to the user. So we know that our computer will now store our face, but what happens to that data? Should we worry about what happens to it? Well, the short answer is yes. You need to be concerned with what happens to your data. But thankfully, Microsoft has been open and disclosed that information. Your biometric data or your facial representation is only stored on the computer you enroll on. You don't need to worry about this being uploaded anywhere, such as to the internet. And even better, the data that is stored on the local machine cannot be extracted and reused by other applications. So remember, where you can, utilize biometric authentication. It's stronger than a password and as convenient as a PIN. Now we'll talk about multi-factor authentication. Like I mentioned, multi-factor refers to the use of 2 or more authentication methods to gain access to a system. All authentication falls into one of 3 methods: something you know, such as a password; something you have, such as an app that generates one-time passwords; or something you are, such as a fingerprint or facial recognition. Now, the most common implementation of multi-factor is the combination of a Windows password, a username and password, plus a one-time password or OTP. OTPs are commonly seen with RSA tokens, Microsoft Authenticator, and Google Authenticator. So what do these look like? Well, if you look at the graphic in the bottom right, you'll see an app that has 2 six-digit codes. These codes change once a minute, every minute, and produce a unique combination. When you log into a site with one of these, typically you enter your username and password first, followed by one of these codes. So where can we use these? Well, many sites support the use of OTPs, and you can set them up for email, social media, and some banking sites. When you set up a site to use OTPs, they will typically give you a QR code to scan, which can be done with the Authenticator app of your choice. Once you scan the QR code, you simply give it a name and it will begin generating OTPs for you. So remember to go in and check the security settings on important sites and see if you can add multi-factor to protect the accounts. Okay, now that we've talked about how to secure our devices and accounts, what do we do in case of compromise? Backups. Traditionally, backups involve getting an external drive and copying your important files to it. Most people will save their pictures and other important documents this way. This is a simple and effective solution to keep your sensitive documents. However, to fully recover, you will still need to reinstall the operating system and any applications you use. This is also an easy method to keep current copies of your data. Some people will go a step further and use imaging software to create a full copy of their computer. This can be a time saver since when you do the restore, you get the operating system, applications, and your personal files back without having to reinstall everything. While it is a more thorough restore, you won't have the most current copy of your data, so there is a trade-off. There are a few other issues as well for these 2 methods. They do rely on having some type of external drive, and the drive needs to be healthy. So events like a power surge or dropping the drive or losing it can completely, eliminate the backups. So you also have to manually copy files to the drive each time you want to do a backup to keep these current copies. Modern backup methods involve cloud storage and continuously backup your files. This allows you to keep the most current copy of your data. OneDrive is a simple solution that integrates so well into Windows, it simply appears like another folder. So with that, a more thorough setup of this solution will back up all of your documents, pictures, downloads, and desktop, which are the primary location storage for the average user. OneDrive can then make these files available to any device that signs into your account. So now your files are backed up and available anytime, anywhere. So remember, whether if you use traditional methods, cloud solutions, or a combination of both, backup should be a part of your safe computing strategy. Now that we have preventative ways to keep us safe, let's talk about another common scenario, public Wi-Fi. These public networks are very tempting as they can save usage of your personal data plan or just give you a faster connection for whatever you're doing. But we need to be very cautious of these networks as they are easy to copy and difficult to distinguish. When an attacker copies a network like this, it's known as an evil twin attack. These are most common on public, unsecured wireless networks, such as those at coffee shops or hotels. How is this attack done? Well, there are 2 primary ways of executing the attack, but we'll just go over the more basic one. So in this way, the hacker will become a man in the middle and try to intercept your sensitive information. To do this, they create a fake network, then motivate users to migrate from their real network. The attacker motivates these users via deauthentication attacks. So essentially, the attacker will repeatedly disconnect the user from their real network. And now that the user is being repeatedly disconnected, hopefully they become frustrated and connect to what looks like a copy of their network. And once they've connected to the attacker's network, now the attacker has the potential to see everything that the user is doing. So what can we do to avoid this scam? Use your cell phone as a hotspot to connect. And if that won't suffice, then get to a trusted network. Okay, so now we'll go over a couple of phishing email examples so we can all stay sharp. I found the longer we look at phishing emails, the attackers try to get more creative. And that's why we just continuously practice looking at these things and look for red flags. These examples that I'll show you are actually real world attempts, so we'll see exactly what attackers are trying. So in the first example, my wife received an email indicating she could win a free Yeti cooler. So who doesn't want a free cooler, right? And if we look at the sender of this email, it looks like it was from Dick's Sporting Goods. So nothing's still too far out yet. We can expect that a large retailer would have a giveaway like this. And since we shop there, we could assume that we would get marketing emails like this as well. However, we need to look closely at the from address because only the display name looks legitimate. Display name is what reads Dick's Sporting Goods. The actual email just looks like a bunch of characters and a bunch of random characters at that. And to add on top of that, the top level domain there at the end, .ml, is the country code for Mali. So at this point, we should know that a mismatched display name like that is someone trying to impersonate someone else, which is enough of a red flag to mark this email as phishing. Randomly generated email addresses should also be a dead giveaway. One other thing to note is if you're on a computer, you can hover over the link or the image and see that the URL does not look like it's from Dick's Sporting Goods. However, do not ever try that on a cell phone. There's no real way to hover and pre-inspect the link to see where it's taking you. If you need to check email from a cell phone or tablet, you'll need to base your decisions on other factors besides links. Some of these could be the sender's address. Does the display name match the actual email? And does the address make sense, or does it look randomly generated? Another factor could be a sense of urgency in the message. And also keep an eye out for poor grammar and misspelled words. These are all too common with phishing emails. All right, this next example was sent directly to me from what looked to be a member of my bass club. And actually, in the end, we did discover this was his real account that had been compromised. Okay, so the sender starts off by asking me if I shop on Amazon. And there's a couple of things to process right away. First off, I expect to receive emails from this person. It's not out of the norm, so the attacker did have that going for them. Matter of fact, since I receive emails from this person on a regular basis, it actually is kind of easy to start ignoring some of the red flags, such as a subject or other things being out of place. The actual message is what gave it away for me. The normal emails I get are always about fishing tournaments. So when he asked me about shopping on Amazon, that was my first red flag. Also, too, he did it in one line. And this person can put together more than one sentence. I get being brief, but this style of writing is so far off from his normal that I took it as another red flag. In fact, the only thing that might have made sense is if he asked about shopping on Tackle Warehouse. Then he might have lured me in. But in all seriousness, the message was enough to know it's not the real person. So at this point, I contacted him directly to let him know that his account had been compromised. And then I don't recommend the next step, but I did respond to the email just to see if the red flags continue to pop up. It's kind of a research method. So we can see that, the reply is just nothing more, than red flags. The reply was asking me to get an Amazon gift card to help out a relative. It had to be done quick. And so we see the sense of urgency, a request for money. There's also grammar mistakes and some misspelled words. So there's enough red flags in that beyond that, that he just revealed that it was an attacker and definitely not the person I expect those emails to come from. So please remember to stay cautious and stay safe when checking emails, and be especially cautious of using mobile devices to check email. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Corey. Those were some awesome tips, especially, with all that we do for our lives nowadays online. You have to stay sharp and stay aware and watch out for a lot of those red flags. So for the last portion of our program today, we're going to share just a few tips with you about holiday safety, things that you can kind of be on the lookout for as you're preparing your holiday meals, holiday shopping, and the like. So we're going to actually start with some Thanksgiving related safety on the next slide. These are some tips specific to cooking in your home. So as you're preparing your Thanksgiving meal, a few things just to be reminded of. Obviously, you want to stay home anytime that you have something in the oven, but additionally, if you have anything on the stove top, you'll actually want to stay in the room of your kitchen at that time. I know it can be really tempting when a lot is going on in the home, especially if you have out-of-town guests, but at least at my house, the kitchen kind of becomes the heart of the home and everybody hangs out there together as we're preparing the meal for our family. The next tip is that while knives are great cutting tools, they should be kept out of the reach of small children. On our next slide, we'll talk about in just a minute some ways that children can help you if you're looking to involve them in your Thanksgiving meal preparation. The next tip expands a bit on what Lieutenant Matthews talked about at the top of our program. Testing your smoke alarm and replacing batteries as needed is very important, and you'll want to do that before you need it, not after you may have an accident in your oven. So as he said, that needs to be checked monthly, and a good time to do that is before you start preparing your big Thanksgiving feast. The next tip, just to make sure that you're staying safe from burns, is to always use oven mitts anytime you're handling hot dishes. That can be even after it comes out of your oven. And I know a lot of people will want to help carrying things out to the table or maybe to your kitchen island if that's where you're serving your meal from. Just make sure anybody who's helping you, you've got plenty of oven mitts on hand for them to help you as well. And then lastly, if there are any slips that happen, or spills rather, that happen as you're preparing your meal, you'll want to make sure that you clean those up as you go. I know it can be, again, really tempting to finish what you're doing and then clean that up next, but you could have an accident that way, especially if somebody comes into the kitchen and didn't realize the spill was there. The last thing you would want is a trip to the hospital on Thanksgiving Day. So on the next slide, as I mentioned, we did find online a couple things that kids of different ages can help with. So this is really great if you have kids or grandkids that are going to be at the home where you're celebrating Thanksgiving this year. And based on the age that they can help with different items. So obviously the smaller children, the things that you would want to ask them to help with if they are wanting to get involved are to be doing things like pouring liquids, washing things in the sink, anything where they can't really get hurt. And then as they get older, they can do a bit more. Obviously, 6 to 8, we've got different things on here they can do. They can stir things, they can help set the table. And then as they get older again, 9 to 12, they can actually start to follow a recipe and be more of a helper all the way up to age 14, where they can almost be a little self-sufficient, but of course it's always best if a parent is around. And this is just to make sure that they don't get hurt when they're trying to help. So on the next slide, let's say that you've now have your feast prepared. I know a lot of people have pets in their household, me included, and it's very tempting to want to share your Thanksgiving feast with your pets as well. Just know that there are certain foods that are safe to share, as well as foods that you probably should not be sharing with your dogs and cats. And the list is pretty similar, but slightly different. I would say in general, anything that you share with your pets needs to be plain. And plain being free of seasonings, butter. You don't want anything fattening for them. Really, for dogs, a few of them I'll just read off here. You can do turkey meat, but no bones or skin. Green beans are good. Sweet potatoes, of course, plain. And then kind of similar for cats as well. Again, turkey meat's a good one as long as you kind of break it up small for them and have no bones or skin there. The things that you want to avoid are anything that's going to be fattening. Obviously, anything that's super sweet or has artificial sweeteners. And a lot of seasonings can be harmful for pets, which is why it's best practice to give them plain food altogether. That way you don't even have to go and, look up online, is XYZ seasoning safe? Plain is best for your pets if you would like to share. But of course, all of this is in moderation as well. So on the next slide, after your Thanksgiving meal, that's usually the kickoff of the holiday shopping season, as well as the holiday travel season. So a few tips for these. If you are out doing holiday shopping, it's always best to be so aware of your surroundings. So that starts with when you arrive. You want to park in well-lit areas if you're going to a shopping center or a mall, and make sure that you lock your vehicle. Kind of that mentality of out of sight, out of mind is a really good practice to kind of keep in mind. So if you do have anything in your car that you maybe forgot to leave at home, make sure that's in your trunk and really out of eyesight if somebody with nefarious intent is walking through the parking lot. The next one, although of course you want to keep your little ones close with you, it is possible to get separated in stores. So before you go shopping with your children, just remind them who they can talk to if they do get separated. And oftentimes that's going to be a store employee. The next tip is related to, unfortunately, pickpocketers. There are people out there who target holiday shoppers, especially if you have your hands full. So a best practice is to actually bring things out to your car in between stores if you can. Of course, you want to be on the lookout, make sure nobody's kind of watching you do this. But again, securing any valuable purchases inside of your trunk, and that really keeps your hands open. But also too, it's always best to just not carry a lot of cash with you so that, there's nothing for them to take, hopefully. Next up, if you're shopping at night, you may not be thinking about it, but your home could actually look very tempting to somebody who, again, has not the best intentions in mind. So if you have a timer for your lights and can just kind of make it look like somebody's home, even if you're not there, that will make sure that your home is safe while you are away. And then lastly, this is more so related to online shopping, so around that Cyber Monday timeframe. Just as we talked about earlier, you want to be aware of scams. Something to look for on web pages is at the very top. If it's an HTTPS site, that means it's secure. Some web browsers will even have a little lock symbol, and that indicates that it's a secure website. So you always want to look out for that before you enter your credit card information. But just as we've talked about throughout this whole webinar, use your best judgment. If it doesn't seem quite right, it most likely is not. So the last set of safety tips that we have to share with you today is related to holiday travel. So some of these are specific to airport flying and travel, but just in general as well. Again, just like the holiday shopping, if you're going to be gone overnight or for an extended period of time, make sure that you set a timer for your lights. Again, it keeps your home secure, but it also conserves electricity as well. If you are going to be gone for longer period of time, another good idea, if you have a trusted neighbor or friend in the area, just to keep an eye on your house. Again, kind of a carryover from the holiday shopping. If you have any packages that are, still coming in ahead of Christmas, if they stack up on your porch, that could actually be a signal to people in the area that you are not home. So making sure if you have a neighbor could go over and collect those for you, that's always a great idea. And then kind of transitioning over more to the airport. Again, if you have kids with you, I know it's very popular to have a lot of cute things with their names on it, little hair bows for girls or backpacks for any kids. Those are best to be used at home rather than while you're traveling. And the reason why is somebody can see their name and then call them over, almost seeming like they know them when they don't. So those are best to leave at home when you're traveling in an area with a lot of people around. And again, just reminding your kids who to talk to in the event that something does happen, then that it's best to only trust adults that they know and employees at the airport. Next, just in general, be aware of your surroundings. Make sure that you keep an eye on all of your belongings at all times. And then back to what Corey said too, online Wi-Fi in the airport especially is highly dangerous. So if you can get away with not using Wi-Fi for just a couple hours in the airport, that's best. Only use your trusted sources, when you're at your final destination, if you're staying with relatives, for example. But again, just be hyper aware, especially on a mobile device. And then lastly, just in general, as always, you want to plan ahead anytime you're traveling. That prevents you having to rush to the airport or in the airport as well. That's when accidents can happen and people can, you don't want to be running out to your gate for that last minute flight. So again, with the holiday season approaching, we just wanted to share some of these tips with you all, and we hope that you found them helpful, as well as the other tips that we shared today. So those are the last of our pre-prepared slides, but we do have some time right now. So we're going to take a few questions from the audience. A couple already started to come in during the webinar. So at this time, I'm going to invite my speakers to come back on and join me. A couple of these questions are for you, and I can take a few of them as well. And while they're joining me back here, I'm going to start with one that I can answer. One question we received is, will COBBMC ever contact me from a private number? And the answer to that is no. We will not call you. We will not, like I said, we're not going to call you and request for payment to avoid disconnection. But the biggest thing is the only reason we would reach out is if in the event of a power outage, we may call you from our power control center just to make sure that you do in fact have an outage before we send a truck out there. But you would be aware of that. It would have a regular phone number. It would not appear hidden at all. Again, just use your best judgment and be aware. The next question, Corey, this one is going to be for you. It's of all the biometrics that you talked about today, what is the best biometric that members can use if they're wanting to use that as a form of protection?
All forms of biometric authentication are going to be about as equally secure. Some of the facial scans, you may get more points mapped out on your face that would be unique. But the main thing with biometrics is that make sure you're using a modern device, because when these devices first came out, it was fairly easy to print off someone's face and use that to authenticate or, copy a fingerprint. So the main thing is just use a modern device if you're going to use biometric authentication. And then also make sure when you set up the biometric authentication, they'll ask you to set up some backup methods as well. So make sure you do enroll more than one fingerprint, or if you're doing facial recognition, also enroll a fingerprint if you can. Yeah, they're all about as equally as safe.
That sounds great. Another question for you, Corey. This member says, I always use a VPN with public wireless. Do you recommend using VPNs?
Yes, you can use a VPN. It's more so to protect your privacy while out on the internet. So if you're concerned with staying private across the internet, then absolutely 100% VPNs are great. The only thing I would say though is, kind of like we mentioned about how the public Wi-Fi networks are easy to duplicate. You want to make sure that before you get on VPN, that you're already connected to what you consider to be either a trusted network, or that you validated that network you're connecting to in some way, because you don't want to get on the attacker's network and then try to initiate a VPN connection. And now you're giving up where you're trying to connect to, and other things may get passed along as well. So.
Great answer. Thank you. Lieutenant Matthews, this next one is for you. And this is kind of the last call for questions. I think we've gotten through most of the big ones. But kind of in regards to holiday safety, what I was talking about as well, is there anything related to fire and Christmas trees that members should be aware of as they're preparing for the holiday season?
So if you're using a live tree right there, the biggest thing right there is to make sure that you keep the tree moist right there. So you want to make sure it's got water and stuff, and really pay attention to the leaves. If they start drying off and dropping out, you don't want to use your electrical lights, which is going to heat it up and cause it to catch fire. The other thing there is with the holiday season, we want to make sure that we're not too close to fireplaces or space heaters. We need at least 3 feet away from every heat source.
I think those are great tips to keep in mind. I'm not seeing any other new questions coming in, so I'm going to thank you both for joining me and invite Chris to come back on to wrap us up here at the end of our program.
Thank you, Krista. And thank you to our panelists today for a great conversation. We want to thank you all again for joining us today, and we hope you have a great afternoon and a safe holiday season. Thank you. Bye-bye.